No, I am your father.
If there was ever a line of dialogue more associated with Star Wars than that one, I couldn't tell you what it is. Fatherhood and the sins of the father are a huge part of the Star Wars mythology, whether it's Luke and Vader, Jyn and Galen, or Ben and Han. But what about fatherhood when there's no shared blood between the two parties? We've discussed the idea of Star Wars and found families before, but never has it felt so integral to a Star Wars story as it does with The Mandalorian. A story about a character who never thought he'd find himself raising a child. It got me thinking about our friend Bryan at the Pink Milk podcast, and how his story of a found family contrasts with my own journey to fatherhood.
I grew up a lot like Luke Skywalker. A kid stranded in the desert, wondering where he came from and where he was going. I never knew who my biological father was, and I was adopted by my dad at the age of 4. Like Luke, I was abandoned by my biological father, and the one left to raise me, he didn't seem to want me. I vowed that one day, if I was ever a father, I'd do better. Fast forward to adulthood, I'd come to embrace the idea that I was a gay man. I met my husband Tom 13 years ago, when getting married wasn't legal in our country, and the idea of having children, it wasn't even reality. I had to accept that I wouldn't be given the opportunity to be a better father to a child. However, in June of 2015, everything changed. We would be able to legally marry, and a year later, our governor, he voided a policy outlawing same-sex couples from adopting children.
In July 2020, a pretty cool thing happened to my wife and I.
Fiona's pregnant.
I've always wanted to be a dad, but when you find yourself staring at a positive pregnancy test, then an ultrasound, and then you buy your first baby clothes, it all becomes incredibly real, incredibly quickly. And big questions hang over everything. What kind of father am I going to be? What kind of father do I want to be? Looking at Star Wars, it's hard to take lessons. Star Warsian fathers are usually defined by their absence, except for one.
After several months of searching for an adoption agency that would say yes to a same-sex couple, despite it being illegal not to do so, Tom and I started looking for our first child. It was November of 2016 when we got the call. There was a boy on an airplane with nowhere to go. We knew little more than he had just turned 7 and that he was landing in only a few hours. We were asked if we'd be willing to take him. We said yes, and everything changed in that moment. We had 5 hours to prepare everything, but it didn't matter. There he was, Jack, my son. It felt like the Force brought us together, just as we would later see it bring together the Mandalorian and the child.
As I'm recording this, my unborn baby is the size of a carrot. I've seen ultrasound pics, but cannot imagine what it will be like to meet them. Those first steps into becoming a father are still 5 months away from me. I can't predict what will happen, but I keep thinking about this. The moment that the Mandalorian reaches out to touch the hand of the child marks the start of his journey to parenthood, but it's not simply a happily ever after. The child is, after all, a job and a payday, and Mando's first obligation is to his clan, not this strange little green creature. The money he hoped to make by delivering the asset to the Remnant Empire is not for himself, but for his clan of Mandalorian foundlings living in hiding. Children orphaned by the Separatists and the Empire and adopted into the Creed of Mandalore. The same way, as we learn, that our Mando was himself. Unlike Bryan, who instantly found his life changed by meeting his son Jack, the Mandalorian is a slow learner. His protection of the child in the first part of the season could have been read as protecting his investment, but in hindsight we can see that there's something more to this relationship.
I can only imagine being a parent to a newborn. There has to be a lot of thought about who that child is going to be. It didn't take long for me to realize that my son was already a full-blown person. A person with a past, a person with experiences, a person with a history. And that history was now part of my future. The battle with the Mudhorn is such an honest moment for a father who built his family the way I did. It isn't hard to imagine that Mando has been in situations like this before, but this time, he isn't alone. At the climax of the fight, all hope looks lost. Mando stares down the eyes of a beast and accepts his fate. As he watches his death charge towards him, something amazing happens. It's revealed that the child has the Force. With one raised hand, the child's history that would determine not only his future, but the Mandalorian's future as well.
The world before and after learning you're going to be a parent are two places so different to each other they could be Tatooine and Kamino. It's a cliche, but you become a new person. Someone who looks at the old version of themselves and wonders why that person worried and fretted over the things that they did. Because now they've got something, well, someone, to think about that is more important than whether their boss is a dickhead, or that Dune has been delayed until 2021. Now your worries and doubts are about whether you'll be able to protect another person, and teach them good things that make them good people. The world is a dangerous place, and for a long time you are going to be the frontline defense between a human being and the terrors of the earth. I won't lie and say I'm not afraid of what's coming. A new father is always going to worry about their capabilities as a protector and a caregiver. It's natural to be terrified and to try and distract yourself from that fear by making a video about a baby alien and his bounty hunter dad. But this is also the start of a grand adventure, and the point just before everything kicks off. Jon Favreau crafts The Mandalorian carefully. On the surface, it's an action-packed, gritty space western. Underneath, we witness an evolution of our main character from lone wolf to lone wolf and cub, a clan of two, a family. We see him take the call to adventure to fatherhood in episodes 1, 2, and 3, then a brief flirtation with giving the child away to people better suited to caring for him in episode 4, a plan that goes awry when Mando's other, more dangerous life intercedes. Then the episodes that don't seem so related to the child, 5 and 6, show Mando struggling to integrate the life he'd built, his day job, into his role as a reluctant parent. It is not until the final episodes that Mando realizes that if the child remains in danger, he cannot function in the world, and that he needs to face his threat head on and remove it. It is only then, and with a push from the armorer, that he fully understands and accepts his role in the child's story.
You must go. A foundling is in your care. By creed, until it is of age or reunited with its own kind, you are as its father.
Tom and I had been a clan of 2 for nearly a decade, but we grew. We grew to a clan of 3, and then, with our son Michael, to 4. And in the middle of this worldwide pandemic, we finalized the adoption of our third son, Eli. Tom and I have now closed our adoption license. Our family is complete. We are now a clan of 5. Watching The Mandalorian, I realized it is the first mainstream Star Wars about a father whose redemption story is at the meeting of his found family and not at the loss of a biological family. And that really speaks to me and my found family deeply. There was a time not too long ago that Jack told me he understood that he wouldn't have the kind of life he has right now if he hadn't been adopted. He's come to think of the day that he arrived at our door as the best day of his life, despite having to leave a family and all that he knew before he could get here. I've watched this show and I've seen the look in the child. I've seen that look that he gives the Mandalorian, and it's the same look that my little ones look at me once I've earned their trust. I've come to understand that the sins of a father's past don't define the fathers of the future, not in Star Wars and not in real life. I've come to realize that I'm doing better.
Mando could have allowed the child to be blasted by IG-11 or left him to his fate with Werner Herzog, a man whose life lessons are less than warm and fuzzy.
I believe the common denominator of the universe is not harmony, but chaos, hostility, and murder.
Instead, he risked his life to protect the child at any cost, and eventually his entire existence becomes focused around the child's safety. This is truly fatherhood. Rewatching The Mandalorian after finding out that my wife is pregnant has been an entirely new experience. It wasn't just entertainment anymore, it was education. The prospect of fatherhood is terrifying and exciting and awesome. It consumes your every waking moment and turns down the volume on everything else. As much as you try to think about your life as being exactly as it is now, but with a baby, you know deep down there is one simple truth. This kid is going to be your entire world. And in Star Wars, the only dad that's worth learning from might not even share the same species as his child, but he is completely and utterly the best father we've seen in the galaxy far, far away.
I'm Bryan from Pink Milk, where I talk Star Wars queerly. We have 2 Star Wars shows. One, Pink Milk Husband and Husband, a morning show, where I talk Star Wars with my husband Tom, a casual fan at best, and a late night live stream where myself, Emma, and Mark all take deep dives into Star Wars lore. There's a link to us on screen now, and I hope you'll join us.